My name is David Reynolds, and for nearly 12 years I believe my marriage to Emma was built on a foundation of mutual respect, unwavering trust, and genuine affection. We met as seniors at the University of Oregon. She was studying journalism, and I was wrapping up a degree in biology. Our first conversation happened in the dim light of the campus coffee shop, where she corrected the barista's quote attribution in her notebook, and I teased her about being too precise. She shot me a challenging look, and I felt that electric spark of connection. Before long, we were inseparable. After graduation, we moved into a modest townhouse in Portland and adopted Marley, a golden retriever whose boundless enthusiasm perfectly matched Emma's spirit. Our weekends filled with farmers markets, local concerts, and ambitious DIY projects. Building bookshelves in the living room, repainting the guest bedroom in sunset hues, and learning to make sourdough from scratch in our tiny kitchen. We built a life that felt uniquely ours, a blend of her passion for storytelling and my curiosity about the natural world. Friends often said, "You two are perfect together," and we'd laugh, sharing a private joke about just how clumsy we both could be when trying to be perfect. In the early years, our marriage was a constant collaboration. I'd leave work at the genetics lab and find Emma curled up with her laptop, typing late into the night for her nonprofit magazine. She'd come home after long days at the local elementary school, her face alight with stories from her students. We'd meet in the kitchen, me with test tubes and pipettes tucked beside my bag, her with notebooks and press passes, and cook dinner together, arguing about whether the pasta needed more salt or the sauce needed more garlic. We were a team in every sense of the word. Then, 2 summers ago, subtle cracks began to appear. So small at first that I dismissed them as artifacts of busy schedules and changing priorities. Emma started traveling for special assignments, texting me vague details about deadlines in Seattle or interviews in Seattle's suburbs. I trusted her entirely. After all, she was a dedicated reporter with a reputation for integrity. But then came small anomalies. Lipstick-smudged coffee cups that didn't belong to me, unexplained hotel charges on our joint account, and the faint whiff of a cologne I'd never smelled before. One evening, I reached for the remote on the living room couch and found a handwritten note tucked under our wedding photo. "Midnight. Just us. Come alone." The words made my heart clench. I confronted her gently in the kitchen later that night, where she was chopping vegetables for our usual stir-fry. She flinched, set aside her knife, and said it was for a confidential story, one she couldn't discuss. When I pressed, she accused me of paranoia and asked if she could have any privacy at all. I wanted to believe her, so I let the matter drop. I told myself that journalism sometimes required secrecy, that trust meant giving her space. That was a mistake. Last Friday, after a grueling 12-hour shift at the lab, I came home an hour earlier than usual and found Emma in our bedroom with a single duffel bag at her feet. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were red and wide, as if she'd been crying or holding back tears. She tried to force a smile, but it faltered. "David, she began. I set down my laptop and closed the door behind me. Every instinct screamed at me to demand an explanation, but I forced myself to remain calm. "Talk to me," I said quietly, folding my arms. Emma sank onto the bed and ran her hands through her hair. "I'm tired of hiding," she said, voice low and trembling. "Just know this. I have a lover. His name is Mark. He's not just some fling. He's someone I've cared about for years. And I want him to stay here on weekends. No more sneaking around. I want this to be honest." My heart broke in 1,000 silent pieces. For the longest moment, I couldn't speak. My mind replayed every memory of loyalty I'd ever given her. I saw her curled on the couch reading my text messages, her laughter when I kissed her in the rain at our 10-year anniversary, the warmth of her hand in mine on our wedding night. Each moment felt like a lie. After what felt like an eternity, I managed a soft question. "You're what?" My voice sounded distant, as though coming from someone else's throat. She stood and faced me. Moonlight filtered through the blinds and painted her in pale silver. "I love you, David. I really do. But Mark and we connect in ways you and I don't anymore." Her eyes filled with tears that glistened like shattered glass. "He's enduring. He's been there for me through things you can't understand. I want him to sleep here sometimes. I hope you can accept it." I stared at her, so vulnerable, yet with an arrogance I'd never seen before. Then, unexpectedly, I smiled. a small, cold smile that felt like ice in my chest. I think he'll be useless to you, I said softly, considering he's already lost his main tool. Her face went blank. What are you talking about? She whispered. I uncrossed my arms and sat at the edge of the bed, my voice calm but firm. I'm talking about his ability to perform. Remember those coffee cups I found with lipstick stains? I paused, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. That wasn't just lipstick. It was lipstick on the rim of cups I'd slipped a harmless dose of antihistamines into, enough to cause temporary dysfunction for 24 hours. She recoiled as if struck. You drugged him. I nodded. Once. To remind you that no matter how convincing his promises, he can't deliver on what matters most. He bragged to you about being unstoppable, so I gave him a taste of his own limitations. Her shoulders sagged, and tears fell freely. You monster. I'm married to a monster who thinks she can redefine our vows by inviting another man into our bed, I replied. We both get to see how that experiment plays out. Tears welled in her eyes as she fled the room, her duffel bag clutched in one arm. I closed the door and sank into my desk chair, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the hum of the air conditioner. My mind was a whirlwind of disbelief, fury, and satisfaction. Part of me wondered whether I'd gone too far. Another part savored the clarity of my response. I spent that night in the guest room, Marley curled at my feet. The house was too quiet, as if mourning the loss of something I hadn't known I cherished so deeply. Outside, streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. Inside, all I could hear was my own breath, and the promise I made to myself. Tomorrow, I would protect what remained of my life, and I would make sure Emma never forgot that betrayal carries consequences. The next morning, I woke early in the guest room and sat at the small desk with a black coffee, my mind already racing through logistics. I had to preserve evidence of Emma's affair, ensure she couldn't quietly remove Mark from our lives again, and prepare for the inevitable confrontation that would come when two men vied for a single woman's loyalty in her own home. First, I collected every fragment of proof I could find. I retrieved the hotel receipts from our trash bin, carefully uncrumpled them, scanned them into an encrypted folder on my laptop, and copied the Uber logs from our rideshare app. I located the cafe tabs that matched the days Emma had claimed she was volunteering late, the same cups I'd laced with antihistamines weeks ago. Each document I scanned and labeled, then emailed a secure link to my attorney with the subject line, "Affair evidence, we'll discuss." I didn't intend to drag Emma through a public spectacle, but I needed to know that if she denied everything, I held irrefutable proof. Next, I turned to finances. Emma had always managed our joint account with ease, paying bills, budgeting for vacations, tracking our investments. She took that role seriously, and I never questioned her diligence. But now I needed independence. I quietly opened a new checking account in my name alone, setting up automatic transfers from my paycheck. Small amounts, barely noticeable, but enough that over a few weeks I would accumulate a private fund. I then visited our bank branch under the pretense of refinancing for a lower mortgage rate. My credit was excellent, a result of years of disciplined payments, so the manager approved a mortgage solely in my name. I signed the papers, legally securing the house under my ownership, and left the bank with a thrill of vindication and a pang of sorrow. Not stopping there, I secured control over our utilities and digital accounts. I changed the Wi-Fi password on my device, created a separate guest network I could monitor, and updated the home security system so that only my phone could deactivate the cameras. Yet all footage would still record on a hidden drive I alone could access. That way, I could watch every movement in my house, even if Emma tried to erase her tracks. Then, I called in backup. My longtime friend Marcus, a counselor at the community center, agreed to act as a witness. Under the guise of dropping off Marley's leash after a walk, he would be on hand if things spiraled out of control. Having an impartial observer would be invaluable, not just emotionally, but legally, if any dispute arose. Throughout these preparations, I maintained a calm exterior. I attended a neighborhood barbecue with Emma at my side, smiled at parent-teacher meetings where she introduced me to her colleagues, and praised her most recent article on local education reform. She seemed relieved, as though I'd accepted her arrangement. In reality, I was steeling myself for the weekend ahead. When Friday evening came, Emma asked if I wanted to join her for dinner before she met Mark. I agreed, telling her I had a late-night lab run and would see her afterward. I packed an overnight bag in our suitcase, then drove to a nearby Airbnb. From that rented cabin, I set up my laptop to stream the hidden camera feed from home. I wanted to watch events unfold in real time, with Marcus ready to step in if necessary. By 10 o'clock, I saw Emma unlock the door and usher Mark inside. He carried a duffel bag and wore a tailored suit that spoke of confidence or arrogance. He glanced around, spotted the security camera, and gave it a cursory nod. Emma led him toward the stairs, her laughter drifting down the hall. I started my timer. 20 minutes later, muted laughter came through the monitor, then silence. An hour later, a frustrated thump and a low groan echoed from the bedroom. At midnight, the door opened. Mark emerged first, face ashen, fumbling with his pants. Emma followed, confusion and concern written across her features. I muted the audio again and texted Marcus, now. Within moments, Marcus appeared at the front door and slipped inside. In the video feed, he approached Emma in the hallway and tapped her shoulder. She looked startled, then pointed toward the bedroom. Marcus texted back, he's out. She's coming. Moments later, Emma stormed down the stairs, eyes blazing like wildfire. Mark lurched behind her, clutching his duffel bag. I watched as she unleashed a torrent of words, betrayal, humiliation, regret, while Mark stood, eyes downcast, too ashamed to speak. Then she hurled her bag at his feet and screamed, "Get out." Mark grabbed his bag and fled down the porch steps, nearly tripping over the welcome mat. Emma turned on me next, her face flooded with grief and anger. I entered the foyer behind Marcus and spoke softly. I told you he'd be useless. You laughed at your betrayal. I gave you a reminder. I gestured toward the staircase. He's gone. You should leave, too. Her expression shifted through shock, horror, and finally heartbreak. She sank onto the bottom stair, tears streaming. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You can start with the truth, I replied. No more secrets. She looked at me as though seeing me for the first time. In that moment, 10 years of shared memories seemed to evaporate into the cold night air. In the days that followed, Emma stayed at her sister's home while I reclaimed our townhouse. Walking through empty rooms felt like mourning the loss of a life I once shared, and, in many ways, still did. Marley padded beside me, tail wagging, offering comfort in his silent way. I texted my attorney, proceed with separation agreement and asset division. Then I refocused on the life I still had, my career, my friendships, my own sense of purpose. At the lab, I dove into my work with renewed intensity. I led critical gene therapy trials, mentored younger researchers, and presented findings at international conferences. Colleagues noticed my disciplined drive and commented on my professional renaissance, unaware of the personal storm I'd weathered. I channeled all my energy into experiments that might one day cure diseases, finding solace in the precision of science. At home, I made small but meaningful changes. I repainted the living room walls in a calming slate blue, rearranged furniture to create a fresh flow, and converted Emma's former office into a woodworking studio. Each morning, before dawn, I'd sand a piece of reclaimed pine or practice guitar chords, hobbies I'd neglected while navigating my marriage's final chapters. These rituals became my lifeline, grounding me in a reality of my own making. Emotionally, I sought therapy regularly. My counselor, Dr. Patel, had me chart daily emotions in a 3-color map: anger in red, grief in blue, and relief in green. Early sessions looked like a turbulent storm, vast swaths of crimson and navy. Over time, I introduced more green, acknowledging moments of peace and gratitude. Learning to forgive myself for missed warning signs was as hard as confronting Emma's betrayal, but with each admission, I felt lighter. One of the hardest tasks was packing up Emma's belongings. I boxed her favorite mugs, the stack of books on the coffee table, and the art prints she'd collected on our travels. Each item held a memory: late-night readings, Sunday brunch chats, hopeful trips yet to come. I handed the last box to the courier and watched it disappear down the street. Part of me wept. Another part exhaled in relief. To symbolically close that chapter, I gathered the physical evidence I'd collected: hotel receipts, coffee tabs, Mark's note, and burned them in the fireplace. Watching the flames consume the remnants of deceit was strangely cathartic. As pages turned to ashes, I realized vengeance had served its purpose. It restored my autonomy and revealed Emma's true self. Now, I was free to rebuild. That summer, I invited a few close friends, Vanessa from marketing, Marcus the counselor, and neighbors who'd reached out, to a casual backyard gathering. We grilled burgers, tossed a frisbee for Marley, and laughed under strung lights. For the first time in months, I felt genuine connection without the need for guarded smiles or rehearsed pleasantries. In their company, I rediscovered the simple joy of friendship. One afternoon, I found an anonymous postcard tucked under my door, a black and white photograph of a deserted beach at dawn. No note, no signature. I held it in my hand, wondering if Emma had sent it, an olive branch of sorts, or if it came from a stranger who understood. Instead of anger, I felt unexpected compassion. Perhaps she, too, sought peace. I placed the postcard on my workbench next to a small potted succulent, a silent reminder that closure can arrive in quiet gestures. Professionally, I thrived. My recent publication on targeted nanoparticle delivery earned me a keynote invitation at a major biotech summit. Standing at the podium, I shared not just scientific data but a brief insight on resilience. Our greatest breakthroughs often arise from overcoming personal setbacks. I glanced into the audience and saw nods of recognition, proof that my story could inspire beyond the lab bench. 18 months have passed since Emma moved out, and my life has transformed in ways I never imagined. I no longer define myself by marital status or by the betrayal I endured. Instead, I measure my days by small victories, a successful experiment, a new piece of furniture crafted in my studio, genuine laughter at a backyard dinner party. My therapy chart is now a tapestry of green and gold, gratitude and hope, with only occasional streaks of red when old memories resurface. I continue weekly sessions with Dr. Patel, not out of necessity, but as a practice and ongoing self-reflection. I've come to view healing as tending a garden, pulling the weeds of resentment, nurturing the seeds of forgiveness, and celebrating each bloom of peace. Earlier this year, I took a solo retreat to the Rocky Mountains, no phone reception, no obligations. Each morning I hiked miles before dawn, sketchbook and journal in hand, capturing pine-scented vistas and listing daily gratitudes. By sunset, I felt a tranquility I hadn't known since childhood. Nature's rhythms reminded me that life endures beyond heartbreak. Back home, I expanded my art and science workshops, monthly drop-in evenings where local artists and researchers exchange ideas over canvases and petri dishes. What began as my personal coping mechanism blossomed into a community initiative, blending creative expression with scientific curiosity. Participants often tell me these sessions help them reconcile emotion and logic, proving that my journey resonates far beyond my own experience. One evening, I found another postcard at my doorstep, a full-color image of emerald waves crashing on a sandy shore. No note. I smiled, tucked it into my journal, and moved on. Whether from Emma or an anonymous friend, it felt like a quiet message. Life moves forward, and each of us writes our own waves. Tonight, I'll host a small dinner for Marcus and Vanessa. We'll toast to second chances, friendship that survived trauma, careers reborn from adversity, and the resilience of the human spirit. I'll raise my glass and say, to living authentically, without regrets. If Emma ever returns seeking forgiveness, I'll greet her with kindness, not bitterness, knowing that my boundaries are clear and my heart is free. But for now, I rest easy in the house I reclaimed, a sanctuary of honesty, growth, and possibility.